The 197th edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been, there ever will be.
Eight up free hand, King likes the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores.
With 20 seconds left to play, goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul.
Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
The Tar Heels are the national daggum champions.
And that's what it takes when you big time games. You've got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. I am now joined by the voice of the Tar Heels Jones Angels. We're on the eve of Carolina's first round matchup with Wisconsin. Jones, how's it going today, man?
Oh, Joshua, I'm doing great, man. Looking forward to the NCAA Tournament. Certainly unique circumstances surrounding the event this year, to be sure. But just excited to, A, that the event's occurring,
right,
and B, that the Tar Heels are a part of it. So looking forward to the action with Carolina and Wisconsin. I think it's a tough matchup for Carolina just because of the makeup of that Wisconsin team, the way they like to play. But certainly excited that the Heels are in the tournament and have an opportunity here.
I'm going to get your thoughts on that matchup with Wisconsin a little bit later. But first, a lot's happened since I last talked with you back in January, including the emergence of Walker Kessler off the bench. Caleb Love had 2 impressive games against Duke, and the steady play of Armando Bacot. What stood out to you the most about Carolina's play during the ACC season?
Oh, gosh. You know, Joshua, I think it has been such an inconsistent year for Carolina. Not that should necessarily come as an enormous surprise when you consider how many freshmen that the Tar Heels are playing. I mean, when you think, if you include Puff Johnson there in the mix before his injury, 7 of the top 11 players for Carolina were either freshmen or redshirt freshmen. Mm-hmm. And so that is just a ton of youth that is playing a ton of minutes. And so I don't think it's necessarily a shocker that the Tar Heels have been so inconsistent. What has been, I think, interesting to see is that inconsistency hasn't narrowed any. And by that I mean you can still see Carolina have some games where they look awesome, where you're thinking, wow, this team could do something close to this on a nightly basis. It could really be a contender for a deep run in the tournament and a top 10 type of team. But then they'll also have some performances that just absolutely leave you scratching your head, like that game against Marquette, for example, in Smith Center, where the Tar Heels just did not look anywhere close to the team that they want to look like. And so that part has been surprising to me, that window of inconsistency, if you will, hasn't narrowed as the season has gone along. Because traditionally, when you get to the end of the year, you have a pretty good feel the range of what you might see. You understand there's a high end and a low end, but that range is normally a little more narrow. This season, that's what's really stood out to me, is that range is still so wide that Carolina can look absolutely terrific and absolutely on the other end of terrific on any given night, and that makes you a little nervous, certainly, going into into NCAA tournament play. As far as individuals are concerned, I think Carolina has steadily improved really at every spot. Has Caleb Love still have some games where he'll end up with a lot more turnovers than assists. Yes, but they are trying to become a little more infrequent.
Yeah.
Kerwin Walton has certainly taken a big step forward. You mentioned Walker Kessler has flashed a couple of times in big ways off the bench. And so I think a pretty normal year for a team that has as many young guys as the Tar Heels do, with that caveat of I'm surprised that the range of performance that you see from Carolina has not narrowed more than it has.
You made it a point on both your broadcast and on Twitter when Roy Williams kissed the floor after the season finale win over Duke. He has since downplayed the act, but what was your initial thoughts, reaction as you were in the building when that moment happened?
Oh, more than anything, it just kind of took me by surprise, just because I wasn't expecting it and had never seen him do that before, at least at Carolina. Mm-hmm. But he has been pretty adamant since then that it was just kind of a in-the-moment type of thing, and that, that Carolina had a lot of success at home compared to away from home this year, which is absolutely true. And that I do think, and Eric Montross, who of course does the broadcast with me on the Tar Heel Sports Network, I think brought up a really good point, and I think it was in postgame that day, of just, I think everybody around college basketball, but particularly the coaches and players, probably have a little different appreciation for what a quote-unquote normal or traditional year looks and feels like now when you've gone through a year like this that has had a lot of other challenges, that there have been so many other concerns that have nothing to do with basketball, and there are so many other protocols and changes and hoops you have to go through. And I don't say that with a negative connotation. I mean, things that you just have to do right now to make sure that everybody is safe and healthy as possible. And so, but that hasn't been easy. And so I do think some of that, in addition to Coach Williams just showing his appreciation to Carolina and to the Smith Center, was just, hey, you know what? Good. This season's been tough. Goodbye to this season, and thank you for everything we were able to accomplish, and looking forward to the future. And so certainly I can understand if you saw that from a passerby, or if you just read a tweet or whatever, that you could read a little deeper into that. But I think Coach Williams has been pretty adamant that there were no ulterior motives there, past him just showing his appreciation.
Let's talk about Carolina's play last week in the ACC Tournament, where they went 2-1, having lost a hard-fought game to Florida State. Was that the best this team has looked in 3 consecutive games this season?
I thought so. I thought it was a real positive event for Carolina. Certainly you did not get the ultimate goal of what you wanted when you're participating in a tournament, and that's to win it. But I thought Carolina really showed some good things. And in fact, I talked to R.J. Davis earlier this week and just asked him, was that beneficial just to kind of learn what a winner-go-home tournament's like at the college level? Certainly R.J. Davis and all these Tar Heels have played in tournaments before they got here. But it's just a different feel.
Right.
It's you win the game or it's done. And, of course, that even ramps up more, as we know, in this next event. And so I think it was so positive for Carolina in that regard, just to get the on-court experience in that type of situation for all the young guys that the Tar Heels have. And I think it was a big positive for Carolina because of the way the Tar Heels played. They looked terrific in the game against Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. I thought, won against a team that played really hard and really well in Virginia Tech. And then had the same kind of set of circumstances against Florida State that we have seen a couple of times this year, of not playing very well in the first half, digging yourself a bit of a hole,
right,
and then being able to work out of it. I do think a combo of Carolina running out of gas late in that game and Florida State ramping up its defensive effort late in the game ended up having Florida State get the win. But there were a good 18 minutes or so there in the second half where I thought the Tar Heels were really, really good against Florida State. And so I know Tar Heel fans are tired of hearing this, and I've said it a bunch this year, but I do think the youth is just something that continues. It is the overriding theme of everything that the Tar Heels do this year. And so I think some of that youth was on display at times in that ACC tournament. But I think, again, just getting that experience was a big positive for those young guys.
Armando Bacot was a handful for opponents in Greensboro. I think he averaged a double-double in those 3 games. While Walker Kessler, Garrison Brooks, and Damon Sharp had their moments this season, is Bacot the key for this team to make a run in the NCAA tournament?
Well, to me, a couple different things are keys. I think number one is turnovers. That has been a pretty clear indication for Carolina whether the Tar Heels are going to be successful or not. And that is, can they manage those turnovers? Carolina's going to have some turnovers because of the way the Tar Heels play, because of the personnel that they have with the freshmen in the backcourt. They are going to have some turnovers. The way that they try to go inside, you're going to turn it over sometimes when you're trying to enter the post just because there's more people down there. But can you manage that number? Armando is part of that, just like everybody's part of that. Just that number can't be 20. If it is, then the Tar Heels aren't going to have a good chance to win any game that they play. And I think it's even exacerbated this year, Joshua, because of how good Carolina is with Armando Bacot being a big part of it on the offensive glass. And so just getting a shot is a good possession for Carolina because they can oftentimes get 2 or 3 shots in a possession when they get the ball to the rim because they are so good on that offensive glass. And so when you're turning it over, you're not even giving those guys an opportunity to be successful. So to me, that's the number one indicator. Carolina needs somebody to be good in the post. I think Armando has been the most consistent this year in that regard, but they have to have somebody be kind of the anchor of what they're doing down there inside, and he has done that oftentimes this season. We've seen the other guys flash at times as well, and so they've got to have that. And then the third thing I think is they've got to have offensive balance, because to me that's what takes this team to a different level. For the most part, Carolina's had, as I just mentioned, somebody be that anchor in the post almost every single game, or maybe it's multiple guys. We've seen that as well, where several of the big guys have good games. Where Carolina goes to a different level is when they can really balance that out with some good. It doesn't necessarily have to be three-point shooting, but when you get some of that three-point shooting with some good penetration to the basket by your guards, smart ball handling, all those things, that's when the Tar Heels become a really, really good team. And so, to me, those are the 3 things. Get your anchor in the post, get some balance from the perimeter, and don't turn the ball over.
You mentioned you spoke with R.J. Davis earlier this week, and he had a really good showing last week in the ACC Tournament, especially in that win over Virginia Tech. Has the light bulb come on for R.J. Davis, in your opinion?
Well, I think more than that, Joshua, it's just a normal freshman getting better through the year. You know, I mean, he's just a young guy who's being asked to do a lot. And so if you look at his numbers, they're pretty up and down. You know, he had a good start to the season, then there was a dip, and then he had a good run in the middle of ACC play, kind of in that late January, early February time period. Then he dipped back down again, and now he's starting to come back up. And I don't think that's unusual. We know R.J. Davis is a big-time competitor. We know R.J. Davis has a good shot from the outside. I don't think it's gone in as consistently as he wants it to, or as it will in future years in Chapel Hill. But he can shoot the basketball. He has that scorer's mentality. And I think R.J. is, for his size, a pretty good defender. Now, he can get in trouble when he's being matched up with bigger guards just because he is a little bit smaller at that spot. But he is going to compete his tail off every single time. And so I think I don't know if the lights come on as much as just he's had a bit of an up and down year. You're trying to make those up and downs smaller as the year goes on. And you hope to be playing your best at this point of the season, which what a big boost it would be for Carolina if that continues, because you've seen Kerwin Walton be pretty consistent from the outside. Teams are certainly paying more attention to him now. But it's hard when you've only got one guy out there who the other team's worried about hitting threes. And so if you can get another one in R.J. Davis or Caleb Love or whoever it is, I think that would really be a big benefit for Carolina.
At the beginning of the ACC season, we saw a lot of Caleb Love and R.J. Davis on the floor at the same time. Then Roy Williams kind of went away from that. But last week and towards the end of the season, we saw them both on the court together once again. Can we expect more of that moving forward through the NCAA tournament?
You know, I really think that has to do with how the game is progressing. And I think think, Coach Williams says that all the time, that you got to be flexible, of course, with your personnel, kind of depending on what's happening. Certainly we understand that Carolina has a top, 8 or 10 players, whatever number you want to put on it, that are going to play the majority of the minutes.